it's important to know what your pH is of your soil, because so many plants are dependent on the soil being the proper pH. Soil pH is a measurement of acidity, neutrality, and alkalinity. What that means is, do you have neutral soil, do you have high alkaline soil, or is your soil acidic? Most plants, specifically the gardening plants or garden plants with your vegetables, they mostly require or do well in slightly acidic to neutral soil. And on the pH scale, slightly acidic is 6.8 to 7.0. They can tolerate 6.5 up to 7.2. They will do well in that range. But something that needs to be in that range, if it's planted in soil that is very acidic, it's not going to do well at all. And the same with it being too alkaline, which is more than 7.2 all the way up to 14 on the pH scale. Now on both ends of that scale, when something is too acidic or too alkaline, nutrients are not available to that plant, and that plant will not thrive. In some cases, it may survive, but it's not going to thrive. It's going to struggle, if not die completely. There are plants who like acidic soil, like strawberries, hydrangeas, many berries actually, but even going down way too low is even too acidic for the acid loving plants. Now you can do things to modify your soil and change the pH. It's not a fast process though. You can add amendments to raise your soil pH, and then some amendments will help lower the pH. But that is not an overnight process and can take a while, if not a whole year sometimes, depending on, what your soil is like. But that's what pH is all about. It's getting the plant in the soil that it grows the best. And testing your soil at the beginning of the season is the best way to know if you're putting plants in the proper location, rather than spending money or time raising plants from seedlings or purchasing them from the store. You don't want to spend your time and money on plants that are just destined to die because they're in the wrong type of soil. Most bagged soil is going to be neutral, but when you're making your own soil and you're adding compost and things from around your property, it is very important to know what your soil pH is. Also, soil pH can change over time because of amendments and things that you've added. So every year at the beginning of the season or right before is a good time to test for your soil pH. You can research the plants you are putting in your garden to figure out what soil those plants prefer. But here's some examples. Tomatoes and peppers do best in slightly acidic to neutral, meaning from 6.8 to 7, but they can tolerate 7.2. If you've got soil pH in that range, those plants should do fine because of the soil pH. Now they may need nutrients, but that soil pH will be fine. Carrots and lettuce like the same type of soil as well. Beans, broccoli, and cabbage can do just fine from 6.0 all the way up to 7.5. They won't have any problem. When your soil pH is too low and considered very acidic, your main nutrients like the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium is not available to your plants in highly acidic soil. On the other end of the scale, if it's high alkaline or high alkalinity, the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, as well as the micronutrients, are not available to the plants when the pH is too high. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier in the video, but bone meal and blood meal will raise the soil pH, sometimes causing it to be too alkaline, depending on how much you have added through the course of the season. But because it's such a slow breakdown, when you just continuously add, what you're doing is raising your soil pH and making it too alkaline. And when that happens, like I just said, not only is the NPK not available, but it can cause the micronutrients to not be available as well. Optimal soil pH is very important, because when those nutrients are not available to your plants, that means you will have deficiencies, stunted growth, and sometimes death of the plant. And testing your soil pH is a very simple process. Not hard to do. You can do it at home. You can also send in samples to any lab that does soil samples, and you can get a really good idea on where your soil stands. Another term you may hear during the course of your gardening is chlorosis. That is a lack of chlorophyll in that plant, and it needs chlorophyll because that is what gives it its green appearance, and it gives it health as well. Let me show you an example, because I have a tomato plant right here that is suffering from chlorosis. Chlorosis will cause the leaves of a plant to turn yellow. In the case that I've got here with this tomato plant, the veins are remaining dark green while the rest of the leaf is turning yellow. In the case of this tomato plant, I believe it's because the pot that it's growing in is so deficient. The soil is so deficient in all the nutrients. Rather than me trying to pile on more, fertilizers and nutrients and just keep adding, I need to replace the soil in this pot and for this plant. I've just been putting it off. I saw it when it first started, but it was like, it's such a big pot, it's a lot of soil, and I haven't done it yet, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. This is lack of nutrients and maybe even a little lack of sun, because I put a shade over this tomato. It got so hot in here and it needs the sun. So before I lose this plant completely, I need to get it out of this soil, rejuvenate the soil, or add new soil so that it can start fixing itself. If I don't, this plant will soon die. And this is the plant, if you've seen any of my earlier videos, this is a tomato plant that's going on 3 years old. It'll be 3 this June. I've maintained it and kept it going every year throughout the year in my greenhouse, and it has produced for me all through the winter. It was my mother's. She passed away, and I kept the plant, and it has done really well. However, sometimes, plants just come to the end of their life and they just have nothing else to give. That could be the case as well, but it's putting out new growth, and the new growth is a nice green. It's the old growth that is turning yellow. See how these leaves, they're yellow, but the veins are staying green. This is chlorosis, and it can be reversed, and I'm going to do my best to do that because I really would like to keep this plant and see how long I can keep it going. I'm just afraid that if I go removing this out of the pot, moving the roots around a lot, I'm going to lose the tomatoes. And there's a handful of tomatoes on here that I'm trying to wait on. I might have to sacrifice them, I don't know. But it's putting out new blooms. The new growth is doing really well, and it's beautiful. I am going to try to fix it, but that is what chlorosis is. It is the result of a deficiency. Now, when you have new, let me see if I have one. Here's a tomato pack that I have not planted out yet, and the bottom leaves are turning yellow. and they are falling off. This is generally, yeah, it's a deficiency, but it is probably a lack of nitrogen. The leaves are not getting that interveinal green on the veins in the leaves. They're just simply turning yellow. Now when you have this, you can just pinch these off, and it needs to be potted. And the reason this is happening, in most likely case, is because I've held them too long in this tiny little pack that I bought them in. I just haven't had the place to plant them yet, and I've been holding on to them too long. But the situation will reverse itself. I picked off some of the damaged leaves, but you can just snip off any of the damaged leaves and plant, and it won't take too long before it will bounce back. A lot of times when you have plants, new seedlings in these pots, or whatever you're, starting your seeds in, and they get up, just yay high, just little bitty things, and then they start developing their true leaves. The true leaves are the real leaves, the shaped leaves, and the non-true leaves, I don't see anything I have here that doesn't have, they're usually round and don't have the serrated edges, just little round leaves at the bottom. Those are the first leaves when the seedling emerges, and those will generally turn yellow anyways, and you just take those off when you plant this. It is common, like those leaves are going to die off. Not a big deal, don't worry about it. But in these plants, it's the lower leaves that are showing signs of stress. And I'm going to snip all of those off anyways when I plant, because I snip way up and I plant really deep. So I'm not worried about that. But it's the younger leaves we don't have to worry about, those young baby leaves, when it comes to the chlorosis. Fungicides, herbicides, and pesticides. A fungicide is a chemical. It can be organic, it can be synthetic, that you will spray to treat a fungus or a disease on your plants. Pesticide is just what it probably sounds like. That is also a spray. They can all come in granular or liquid fashion, but pesticide is something you're going to put out to kill pests. Herbicide is something you're going to put out to kill weeds. Now, the fungicide, the pesticide, and the herbicide all comes in synthetic form, organic form, liquid, and granular. Well, sometimes it's a powder as well. But anyways, that's what those three chemical products are, is to treat pests, to treat weeds, and to treat diseases. This list that I gave you is not all inclusive. I know there's a lot more terms that I have not even begun to think of mentioning. But if you make yourself knowledgeable on all these terms, you'll learn to recognize symptoms and situations and pests and things like that when they crop up, and you'll quickly learn how to deal with them. I hope this video was helpful. If you like the video, please hit the like, thumbs up, and please share it with your friends. And I hope, until I see you again on the next video, I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.